If you clicked on this video, then you probably already have a desire to be able to jam with other guitarists. If not, you should. Not only is jamming at the very heart of what it means to be a guitar player, but it's really like discovering the instrument all over again, as you can now play new harmonies, melodies, and rhythms that are literally physically impossible with only one instrument. And even if you have no desire to play in a band or with other guitarists whatsoever, jamming is really one of the best things you can possibly do to up your own music knowledge and become really a better solo guitarist. Not only because you can trade ideas and cool knowledge on the guitar with your jamming buddy, but also just because it develops your understanding of rhythm and the way notes and harmonies interact in such a more comprehensive way than just playing by yourself does. Okay, now that you understand the importance of jamming with others, it's time to address the question, how do you get better at it? Maybe you're asking this question out of embarrassment at your own ineptitude with jamming and you just don't feel comfortable playing with someone else until you're really proficient. Or maybe you're perfectly comfortable playing with others and you just want to up your game before your next jam sesh. Regardless, there's only one thing that you need to understand in order to get better at not only jamming, but really anything on the guitar, and that is practice makes perfect. Now, I know you've heard this 100 times in your life, but it's really true, especially when it applies to guitar. There are no shortcuts. So the only way to get better at jamming is by jamming. The problem this presents for most of us, however, is that we don't always have a jam buddy to play with whenever we feel like practicing jamming. That's where a looper pedal comes in. If you don't know what a looper pedal is, it's just what it sounds like. It's essentially just a guitar pedal that allows you to loop your own playing and essentially simulate the presence of more guitarists and jam with yourself. I'm going to give you a quick rundown of what your setup will look like. It starts with an electric or acoustic electric guitar, if you have one. If not, you can also always just use a microphone, which can actually be cool for adding in vocals and percussion on top of your loop. Your guitar or mic is then run directly into the looper pedal in the line in input. Another line is then ran out from the line out output into either an amp or an audio interface, which would then be plugged into your computer where you can record your loop on a digital audio workstation. Note if you're using this method, you'll need a set of headphones plugged into your audio interface so you can hear the loop as you record. Most looper pedals will require you to plug it into the wall, although some are battery operated. I was asked how I record my loops, so I generally go from my acoustic electric into my Boss RC5 looper pedal, into my Focusrite 4i4 audio interface before going into Ableton 11 Lite as my DAW on my computer and listening to the loop with a set of headphones as I record. As far as making a loop, you'll have to read the specific instructions unique to your looper pedal, but it's usually as simple as just a tap to start and end the loop, and it should continue looping by itself, during which time you're able to overdub. If you're looking into buying a looper pedal, I'd take into account the recording time, loop time, how many overdubs it allows, general ease of use, whether or not it has built-in drums, and whether or not it is battery operated. Do thorough research now so you have no regrets later on. Okay, now that you're all set up comes the fun part, jamming. When you're using a looper pedal, try to let your curiosity guide you and never be afraid to try new things because this is absolutely the best way to learn. Here's some tips I'd recommend for creating good guitar loops, but remember that looping is really all about your own expression and letting your creativity reign and just moving your fingers where they want to go. So don't feel like this is something that you have to stick to. It's just a blueprint that I found that helps me make good loops most of the time. Start with the chord progression. This can be from songs that you've heard or learned or things that you just came up with yourself. Some fun chord progressions I found include 6 to 1 to 4. One to 4 to 7 to 5. And 6 to 4 to 1 to 5. But don't just take my chord progressions. Remember, the best part about looping is finding new cool sounds on your own. Okay, once we have the chord progression down, now we can work on the bass line, depending on whether or not the loop needs it, of course. This is completely up to you to decide. For example, I thought this loop could use a cool harmonic bass line. but I felt this one already had enough low end. And once again, don't be afraid to experiment and have fun. This is how the best learning happens. A lot of looper pedals, as mine does, have an erase function where you can actually delete the last loop that you just recorded. So if you try something and it doesn't work out, you can just delete it and try again. After the bass line comes the harmony. This is where the real experimentation occurs. Try to let your ears guide you as you fill out your loop. Sometimes it might feel like it needs some harmonics. Other times I might add an offbeat riff. Once again, try crazy stuff and have fun. If your looper pedal has a drum function, now might be a good time to turn those on. Otherwise, if you're using a mic, you can also make your own drums with thumping, slapping, and dead strums. At last, once you feel that you have a good solid loop down, not too cluttered, this is something that you're going to have to experiment with yourself, it's time to solo. So stop overdubbing, you don't want to loop your solo, and try out some of those scales you've been practicing. I'm not much of a scales guy myself, but it's definitely something I want to work on, and it really is a never-ending journey. But to start off, it's a good idea to learn the minor scale. And the very similar G-shaped minor pentatonic scale. This is usually the first scale that most people learn, and it looks something like this. If this scale is new to you, I'd suggest watching a YouTube tutorial on it. I don't really have the time to go over it in much detail here, but this video is probably the best on YouTube when it comes to learning the G-shaped and really all shaped minor pentatonic scales up and down the fretboard. And once the minor pentatonic scale feels comfortable, seek out other scales. Take the time to map out all the major and minor triads up and down the guitar neck. Take your favorite runs and riffs from solos and songs that you've learned and start to slowly piece together all these pieces of information to realize that really the guitar is not like this fretboard of specific patterns and notes that occur in various positions. It's more of this dynamic flow of patterns and styles that kind of mix with one another in various ways. And you'll start to see that the more that you practice this kind of thing and look at the guitar in different ways. In the beginning, however, all you're going to need is the G-shaped minor pentatonic scale. And the first thing you're going to have to do is find the key of your loop. This will get easier as you delve deeper into music theory and learn more about how chord progressions are formed and how keys work. But in the beginning, you can just kind of start with taking the low E string and just walking up chromatically and listening to what you're playing over the loop. And you're just going to try to find that sweet spot where the note just really feels like home. And that's going to be the key of your song. I'll show you an example. Okay, so I'm just going to start with the chord progression. Now we're just going to walk up, starting with the low E. And you hear that's kind of dissonant. It just doesn't really sound like the home of the key. So we're going to keep going. Now this one, it sounds like it kind of fits in some spots, but it's not quite what we're looking for, so we're going to keep going. This one doesn't fit here, but it will fit over one of the chords. Right here. We're looking for something that fits over everything, so we're going to keep going. Almost. That one. Nope. Dissonant. 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 Here you can kind of feel that it just wants to go up one more half step, and indeed if we do, There it is. That's the home. Right. So that's the key. That's a D right there. Right. If this is low E, that's 12th is our octave. Down one whole step is a D. But now we have to figure out if it's a major or minor. And the way that we're going to do that is by just using our G-shaped minor pentatonic scale. And we're just going to start on this D. And if it fits, if we go over the pentatonic scale starting on that D and it fits over the loop that we're doing, then it should be a minor key that we're in, because that's a minor pentatonic scale starting on that root note. Otherwise, we're actually going to have to shift it down to the relative minor of this key, down 3 half steps. And then if we play that, and that one fits, then that means that it's actually D major. And that's why the second note of our pentatonic scale would be the root or the key of our song. So this would assume that our key is D minor. That obviously doesn't work, so we're gonna go down. And that one works, so turns out our key is D major. And that's it. You can now solo over your loops just by finding the key of the song and picking notes from the corresponding G-shaped minor pentatonic scale. And I love personally finding patterns in these scales and riffs that help tell a story and give a certain emotion that you can use to recreate that motion in any loop that you're using. I'll give you an example. This is one that I really like. If you're in the minor pentatonic scale, G-shaped, and we're down here on the G string, say we're in the key of A minor. So here would be like a C. And I like sliding up from this second note on the G string in the scale, and then hitting that minor third like that, and then we can slide back down and pull off. I'll show you some examples of when I used it in actually my own loops right now. And the next time you go jam with someone, you can show off all the awesome things you've been working on. Maybe even teach them a thing or two. I want to reiterate that this isn't like a substitute for jamming with others. There really is nothing else like playing with another guitarist to build your musical charisma. But looping is probably the best way to work on your own musical understanding in a completely no-pressure situation where you can really just stop, take the time to pause and count notes, think about why things are working or not working, watch videos on a discovery that you're making to really delve deeper into it, and really just stay curious and have fun while you're at it. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.